Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Things That Keep Me Up at Night podcast. You can see a plethora of gentlemen joining me today. We have TFT, who has been on my channel before, and he's a moderator at the Time Teller channel, so a watch enthusiast. We have producer Greg here, making sure that everything is going smoothly. And we have perhaps a newbie to this channel, but not a newbie to the YouTube watch world. We have Brandon from Watch and Unwind. I urge you guys, if you're interested in wristwatches, to not only check out my channel, but check out all the other content creators, Brandon being one of them, very knowledgeable, passionate dude who's been a supporter of my channel for a while, and he has a good sense of humor too. He's challenged me to a curling competition, not the Olympic curling, but the big bicep curling. So today we're not going to be talking about watches. We're not going to be talking about weightlifting. We're actually going to be talking about the moon landing. That's right. That thing in the sky, that glowing thing at night. Have we been there? Should we go there again? Have we never been there? You know, there's a lot of opinions and people get very heated about this. So first, before we even delve into the topic, TFT and Brandon, let's do some quick intros. So John, TFT, who are you and why are you here?
So, my name is John. I'm one of the moderators on Jory's channel, and I'm just a conversationalist, I suppose. I'm just here to discuss our topic today, the moon landing. So I'm interested to hear some perspectives, and I personally believe that the moon landing happened. So I'm interested to see how this discussion goes and to hear different perspectives and points of view.
So awesome. And this brings me to something I kind of want to set up. This may come off as a debate. What I don't want it to come off as is us ganging up on one side or the other. So I'll just right off the bat give my opinion up front. I think we probably went there, but the whole reason of doing this podcast is because I want to learn about other perspectives, and I'm actually very interested to see the catalyst of what was the first piece of information that led people to believe otherwise. That's super interesting to me. So but again, before we get into that, Brandon, Watch and Unwind, who are you? Why are you here?
So I'll give you a little bit of background information on myself. By occupation, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. So I have a doctorate. I'm not just like some quack that lives in his mom's basement, tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist. I do have my Bigfoot hat on today, though, since we're here to talk conspiracy theories. A couple of things about myself. I live in Alaska, so that's pretty different, a different kind of point of view from a lot of people. I used to be a pro MMA fighter, but I'm kind of retired now, and I have my watch channel, Watch and Unwind. Thanks for the intro, Jory. You're the big dog. I'm inspiring to be like you. My channel is about 188th of your channel.
Hey man, right you got to start somewhere though.
1K, yeah. So if we can pump those numbers up, I'd be happy, guys. Please check me out on YouTube. Please check me out on Instagram as well, Watch and Unwind. But I'm here to talk conspiracies today. I'm definitely not an expert in any of these areas, but I listen to conspiracy podcasts pretty often. I was like yourself. I didn't really lean one way or another. I took in a lot of information, and once you take in a certain amount of information, it's hard to go back. You hear the term gone down the rabbit hole. So this is white belt level stuff. I got this in the bag. I knew when you want to talk moon landing, I'm like, I got this. And I think why a lot of people, yourself, your buddy over there, why you think we went, it's just a lack of this information. There's no speculation here. I want you guys to look into this. It's a lot of information. I kind of laid it out in a strategic way I want to go through, but fact check me on this. Google it, look on DuckDuckGo. Don't just look on Google. A lot of times stuff is censored, but you can look all this stuff up easily, no speculation. So if you want to go right into it, just let me know and I'll kick this thing off.
Yeah, man. So I'm actually interested real quick. Producer Greg, what is your opinion? And on this topic. By the way, you might hear some chirping because Seiko is in the office right now and she's very talkative, my little cat. Greg, have we gone there, and what's your opinion on the moon landing?
So I actually just read over all the material that Brandon sent, so I'm kind of convinced we didn't right at this moment. But my whole life I've always thought we went. I've just like, we went, and then it's just like, oh, it's just conspiracy theories that we didn't. So I'm getting convinced right now, I think, is what's happening, because I read over all the material just briefly, and I was like, this is going to be exciting. But I really want to see what both sides have to say, and kind of want to get convinced.
So I don't know what color pill this is, but Greg just got pilled of some sort.
You got the red pill.
Yep.
So, okay. So
I'll ask all you guys at the end, gun to your head, Jory. I want to answer. I don't want to maybe. You got to give me that.
Okay. Deal. So what I want to have happen is, I know that I have a bunch of questions for Brandon, because although he claims he's not an expert on this, he's the resident expert. He's the expert today for this podcast.
Yeah. Like I said, this is white.
Right.
Yeah,
and again,
full transparency, I have not prepared for this, as in doing any major research or anything like that. I'm just some guy with a.
That's cool.
Right. So we are all open to being convinced one way or another. That's what I'm trying to say. Also, I really do appreciate Brandon giving us like his credentials, because again, I don't want this to come off as us ganging up on one side, ganging up on another side, ganging up on one person, just because you believe. This is why I find conspiracy theories so interesting, is because I think conspiracy theories immediately right off the bat have a very negative connotation. I also think that if you believe something other than a mainstream narrative, you are immediately like exiled. You're immediately cast off into some group. You're demeaned. You are lesser than. And when it comes to conspiracy theories, it's easy to write off someone as being just some like kook. Like, oh, you don't believe in this? You're crazy, and now I don't believe in anything else you say. I don't think that's necessarily the case, and that's why on this podcast, I want to talk to a gamut of people that believe in a wide spectrum of things, because I know for a fact Brandon, to me, doesn't come off as some like dummy. He's clearly a fairly intelligent, normal guy. So I am very interested to hear what it was that, number one, led him down the rabbit hole, and number two, has now convinced him, because perhaps it'll convince me. So Brandon, kick it off. Where did you first kind of start getting led down this rabbit hole towards the topic of today, moon landing denial?
It's a combination. I got a whole list here of just a lot of really wonky stuff, a lot of stuff straight from the mouths of astronauts. So to kick it off, we supposedly gone to the moon with 1960s technology. We had less computing power than is in one single iPhone right now. We haven't been back. This is the only single time in history where technology has moved backwards. It has been on a really upward trajectory, but here it has been at a complete standstill. We're actually gone backwards. And that's just not the way. The first thing in a conspiracy theory is, does it pass the common sense test? And it just didn't pass the common sense test for me. NASA's official explanation of why we haven't been back to the moon is because they have destroyed that technology and it is too hard to build it back. And you guys probably don't even believe me in that. And Greg, that's why the first video I got right here is Don Pettis. He is NASA's oldest living astronaut, and he's been to the International Space Station many times. This is a video of him responding when someone asked him why we have not been back to the moon yet. So Greg, if you want to pick up that video, it's just about 15 seconds, I think, of him talking, then you can stop the video, because there's some like meaty stuff after.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
So he says the problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. we destroyed it. So let me get your guys' take on that. Why on earth would we have destroyed this technology?
Right. I have an interesting thing right here that kind of debunks this. I also sent this link to Greg. We'll pull up an image for the visual viewers, but apparently this is listed as conspiracy number 5. And it's, if we went to the moon in 1969, why have we never gone back? So Apollo 17, the last Apollo mission to land astronauts on the moon, took place in 1972. Since then, humans have never returned. Maybe that's because we never went to the moon in the first place, right? I think that's kind of something that Brandon's alluding to. Apollo 17 wasn't meant to be the end of the story. Of course, throughout the 1970s, there were ambitions to establish permanent lunar bases, or I should say a permanent lunar base, before returning to the next major space exploration challenge, Mars. This is from rmg.co.uk. I will leave a link to all of these and all of Brandon's things in the description. So here says it never happened, but this was no grand conspiracy. This is geopolitics. So we never went to Mars is what this is stating, which I agree with. Although Elon Musk is trying to change that apparently. The answer is we changed our priorities. From a combination of the Vietnam War, but also there was geopolitical elements of thinking. We've won the race. Just as we got good at doing science on the moon, we've abandoned it. Instead, attention turned to space shuttle program and laterally the International Space Station, which has been permanently inhabited by teams of astronauts since November of 2000. But it doesn't mean humans couldn't return to the moon in the future. So this doesn't necessarily attack the point of why or why not they destroyed that technology or that information. I guess myself, as someone who has kind of a healthy distrust of the government and like any authority really, is that they're not going to really give us any information on anything accurately, and they're going to, I feel like they destroy information on everything. They redact everything. They don't like share anything with us. So I don't know what camp that actually puts me in, the Brandon camp or the believer camp. I'm just going to say that I tend to agree with the fact that our priorities as a country changed since then. So the way I guess I would attack Brandon's first point as to why we haven't been there again is, well, when we first went there, there was literally the space race. There was the Cold War. There was a priority to show lunar superiority, technological superiority. And it was in our best interest at the time to put all of our resources and all our efforts to proving that we could do that and getting there first. I guess one question I have for Brandon is, if we didn't go and we lied about it as the US government, don't you think that our enemies at the time, like Russia, would have exploited that like immediately? Don't you think they would have like immediately been like, well, no, they faked it and here's why? I feel like Russia would have put a ton of resources into like proving why we faked it, and they never did.
There is a couple of different theories, like kind of ways to move about that. And one of them is just, I don't think you can get off Earth orbit. We'll talk about it a little later on, the way I laid out my information. But the Van Allen radiation belts, they're keeping us landlocked on Earth. And I don't think any country wants to let that out. It kind of makes us seem like a small fish. No one wants to admit that. And it was kind of the lie that just went too deep. No other country, they must know, but they didn't want to call us out on it.
Right. So this, I think, is another large talking point in this community, is the Van Allen belt of radiation around Earth. For those of you who don't know, we're going to be pulling up some graphics for the visual viewers, but essentially you can almost treat it like a force field around Earth, and it's this belt of radiation literally encompassing the area around Earth. Now, this in the article is listed as conspiracy theory too, because I think this is one that's picked up a lot of steam. Apollo astronauts could not have survived Earth's radiation field. Earth is surrounded by a zone of charged particles known as Van Allen radiation. These regions surrounding Earth are in our magnetic field where high energy is trapped. And the sun, trapped particles from the sun, tend to get confined within this space. What that means, is if you're going into these regions, there are extremely high radiation concerns. So if that's the case, how did Apollo astronauts travel through the Van Allen radiation belt and out of Earth's orbit unharmed? Surely they would have been like messed up from that. So the professor replies, I'm so sorry. It's Professor Ojha. It's Ojha. I'm sure that I'm butchering the name. But the answer apparently is firewalking, he says. So if you've ever done firewalking, you'll know the one thing you don't do is linger around the middle of the fire pit. You cross as quickly as you can. From a science point of view, as long as you walk quite quickly, looking at the thermal conductivity of your feet, you're not going to have enough thermal energy going into the soles of your feet to burn you. In a similar way, the transit time through the Van Allen radiation belt right at the beginning of the Apollo voyages was incredibly short. Traveling through the Van Allen radiation belt, if you are going fast enough, which you need to be if you're going to go to the moon, is no problem whatsoever. So that's what this, NASA professor rebuts that with. So if you're traveling fast enough, you won't be exposed to enough radiation to get hurt. So is the argument that there's no way we had the technology to go through that fast enough?
I don't believe we do. There's more video. There was some trouble with the audio, but there's video of astronauts saying, and this is what I found quickly. I just found out about this podcast. I made this sheet, pretty quick, but NASA has admitted that we cannot get through the Van Allen radiation belt right now. It was a gigantic problem in the 50s and the 60s. This was one of the number one reasons why people said we weren't going to make it. Some astronauts were saying it too. Scientists were saying it, and it wasn't a problem. I mean, it was a big problem until it wasn't. And now the justification that we did do it is, well, yeah, the astronauts did it. But that, to me, that's not real justification. You're saying, oh, yes, it's possible because it happened. And he's saying you can go through really fast, but it goes from about 1,000 miles up to 30,000 miles up. It's just a gigantic space. So as fast as you're going, it's just such high levels of radiation. Everyone knows it should have killed these astronauts. I'm not sure if they sent up any animals and they died. I thought they might have, but I'm not sure. But there are Geiger counters that were on the ship, but they won't let us see them. They're locked away, like right. Everything else in the government. We're not allowed to see those numbers because if we seen them, we would know that no one was supposed to survive that. And it's the only. Why haven't we been that far? Again, the International Space Station is 250 miles up compared to 30,000.
Do you believe that we have people on the International Space Station?
I do. There is some wonky footage, and that's why I don't believe we could have went to the moon, and the footage was so crappy that they faked it all because they wanted to show everyone, but someone dropped the real footage. Well, who knows, what happened. I think we are on the International Space Station. You can see it whiz by in the night sky and stuff, but some of the footage, for whatever reason, looks pretty wonky, and we can talk about that in a little bit. So we had that first video that I believe Jory's going to drop in later. There's a little technical difficulty of Don Pettis stating that we have destroyed the technology to go to the moon. This is a second video of an astronaut aboard the ISS, and he's stating we don't have the technology to leave Earth's orbit, as we were just discussing. So let's go ahead and play this video.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Yeah, I've heard moon landing deniers bring this up, and this is pretty damning. The thing is that it is a fairly short clip, so I wonder. I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, it's taken out of context, but I do wonder what context that was placed in, because that is very damning. When especially when you hear that these people are floating in a space station, and you hear them say, well, we're trying to get the technology to leave Earth's orbit because that's the farthest we can go. John, I could see you thinking about something.
Yeah, and I have some experience in plasma physics, but I don't have experience in aeronautics, nor space adventuring. I do have a conceptual question though. The Earth does orbit around. I mean, the moon does orbit around the Earth. It's not like you would leave Earth's orbit to get to the moon. You're still within Earth's orbit. So, conceptually, that sounds kind of silly as an argument. I hear also the radiation concept. We've been dealing with radiation studies and the development of the atomic bomb, and that predates the moon landing mission. So I kind of have a little bit of a conceptual argument there, and cool if you want to say that, okay, well, the moon is so far to the exterior of Earth's orbit that we can't get to that. That's a different argument than saying that you would have to go to Mars and leave Earth's orbit and yet still be in the sun's orbit. So I just have a few conceptual, I guess,
qualms. Yeah. So, Brandon,
I hear you on that, but he actually used the phrase, and I misspeak all the time. I'm sure Jory misspeaks on YouTube.
All 24/7.
But and they call me out. I got a bad Boston accent, so I pronounce everything wrong. But he said the moon. He said go to the moon, and the ISS is 1/1000th of the way to the moon. We just haven't gone nearly that far again, and it just leaves a lot of gray area. Why haven't we gone that far again? Why haven't we even went close to going that far again? We've gone literally 1/1000th of the way since we supposedly went to the moon. So, I mean, technically, yes, it is within Earth's orbit, but it is so far below where we are now that I think it's pretty damning.
So, Brandon, do you think there's any credence to the geopolitical shifts? Do you see any credence at all with the response that, well, we haven't gone there again because it has not been a priority since the early 70s? We're not. I mean, so much has changed socioeconomically and geopolitically that, I mean, just within our own country, let alone globally. It's and I want to bring up all of this stuff because, again, we're going to be talking about 9/11. I believe on Monday I'm recording that podcast, but like so many, the Vietnam War, everything that happened after that, the repercussions that happened after that, the 1980s going into the 90s, and then the 2000s, then 9/11 happens. Then that is another thing that changes the world, and our shift has been a focus on national security, and then we have this huge police state, and then there's all these global shifts. It almost seems like, in the grand scheme of things, our government doesn't really care about leaving Earth's orbit again. It wasn't on our the forefront of our minds. It wasn't the focus. And do you think there's any at all credence to that argument?
There is, but these other governments care. I mean, these other governments are trying. I think India was trying. Japan does a lot of stuff with the moon. We have the International Space Station. They're still spending a ton of money. We have Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all these private companies now with almost endless funding. They're trying. They haven't done it yet. They haven't even came close. Way more computing technology now, supercomputers, that we didn't have. The technology was so poor in the 1960s. This podcast wasn't possible. If you're looking at the technology, it's just, we should have surpassed something. We should have came closer to what they did back then now. And things have changed, but I think enough countries are still trying to go that someone else would have went by now. And if we want to talk about like different groups and stuff, literally the foundation of NASA, I think we got to talk about the foundation of NASA, because there's just a lot of weird stuff going on. This can kind of like go on a little tangent again, but the most celebrated person in the history of rocketry is Wernher von Braun. He was a literal Nazi SS member under Adolf Hitler.
Well, it was all
yeah.
It was all Operation Paperclip, right? And all of this stuff, bringing in Nazis because they were the premier rocket scientists, and you know, you get into the Manhattan Project and things like that. But I don't think that. Okay, I'm a Jew and I'm also an American, so I am like totally not one to defend Nazism at all. I don't like any of these guys. Anyone that had anything to do with it, screw them. However, I don't think that we can negate the fact that, like, of course, some of the technology that we got have come from bad people. I mean, there's a bunch of medical stuff that we learned from Nazis doing experiments during the Holocaust. There's a bunch of other medical stuff that we learned from the Japanese when they were like torturing people in their prisoner camps. So like, there's really bad, dude. This is actually, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I own 2 Porsches. Porsche was literally started by a Nazi, like literally. And so, and you know, my dad has a Mercedes. That was Hitler's car. You know what I mean? Like, so what I'm saying is we get technology, and some of the products that we have and utilize in a modern society have come from bad places. So I don't think that we can use that argument that, well, you know, one of the most celebrated people in NASA was a Nazi. Yeah, I mean, you go far enough back to any corporation and you're going to have some like, I think Henry Ford gave money to Hitler, right? Wasn't he like a big, yeah. So, I mean, you go back into any corporation deep enough and you'll find people that have had bad ideas and have done terrible things. But I don't know if we can negate all of NASA simply because one of their premier people was a Nazi. Is this making sense, or am I just rambling?
No, it definitely makes sense. I just don't think a lot of viewers know that. I don't think he should have an arena named after him. And I think Alabama, this is the Von Braun Arena. This dude was an SS officer. I don't care what he did. That ain't cool, man. You know what I mean? I just don't think the viewers know this. And this is why I'm bringing it up, because I just don't think it's the most trustworthy organization to start. Jack Parsons was another character. Did you guys know about Jack Parsons, who he was?
Fill us in. Greg, pull something up about it.
Yeah, so he's another one of the fathers of rocketry. He was a chemist. I believe he made the engines and the propellant for the rocket fuel. And he was best friends with Aleister Crowley, who I'm sure you guys
Oh my
have
gosh.
heard.
Yes, Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley was his personal mentor.
Dude.
And he was a member of another occult secret society called the OTO. This is going to get funky, but this ain't what I believe. This is what they believe. Right. So Parsons, Crowley, and L. Ron Hubbard, who was the founder of Scientology, spent months in the Mojave Desert doing weird rituals, trying to bring forth the end of the world. It's well documented.
The moonlight ritual or something, wasn't it called that?
Dude, it gets weird. It's such another tangent and podcast you can go off, but these are the type of people NASA have working for them, just some real characters.
So for those of you who don't know Aleister Crowley, I believe, wasn't he the Golden Dawn? That was his like cult or whatever.
And then that's where he started. They got dissolved, and then he started his own called Thelma.
Right. So, okay. There's another podcast, which is like literally the premier podcast in the entire world. last podcast on the left, they cover true crime, they cover conspiracy, they cover, shout out to them. They have their own podcast network and they're crushing it. They have a whole series on Aleister Crowley, so I urge you to listen to that. But for those of you who don't know, Aleister Crowley, born in England, 1875 to 1947, he was an occultist, ceremonial magician, a poet, a painter, and a novelist, and a mountaineer. He was born very, very wealthy. His dad left him a bunch of money, but because he was kind of an eccentric weirdo, he was penniless for a while. He believed in occultism and wizardry and witchcraft, and he did, like Brandon said, a lot of really, really weird, gross things that I probably would not want to talk about even on this podcast. But yeah, they had a ritual. Let's see, the Golden Dawn from 1898 to 1899. We're gonna pull this up. I'm gonna have Gato splice this in, but there's literally an image on Wikipedia of him, Aleister Crowley, dressed in almost like a pharaoh outfit, and they do these rituals, I believe trying to bring on the end of the world. Correct, Brandon? They were trying to.
Yeah, they did. I'm not an expert in the occult. I have read a couple of Crowley's books. The mumbo jumbo, they're hard to read.
Right.
But that's what they call it. You need to read it 10 times to kind of get what he's talking about. But I have done enough work on the occult to know that the Freemasons kind of believe the same thing at the end of once you're 33rd degree Mason, the OTO, Crowley's work, it all kind of leads. If we think of watches, we're thinking of the Swatch umbrella. They're all kind of under the same thing. And there's a very disproportionate amount of astronauts that are Masons. I do have a video link to list all the astronauts who are Masons. And it just seems statistically unlikely that such a small fringe group of people, that many astronauts would have happened to be Freemasons. It's a little weird if you ask me, but yeah, Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, who was this founder of Scientology, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And Crowley, it was called the Babylon workings. They were trying to summon an Antichrist-like God to come usher in the end of the world. This is not my wording. I think they're idiots. Maybe they're onto something, but I don't know what's worse. It's either real or they believe it. It's, you know what I mean?
So
look it up.
so here's my question. Regarding this. We went on kind of a tangent, but this is really interesting, and I'm sure the listeners will be like, "Wait, cover more of that." So thank you, Brandon. We'll have to have you on again to talk more about that stuff. But here's my question: going into this, you mentioned Freemasonry, occultism, Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, who is another, fanciful storyteller. Some people argue that Scientology is a cult, so some people label him a cult leader. And I'm really trying not to be disrespectful to anyone who may follow that religion. And so my question is, where does that tie in to the moon landing and NASA? Do you believe that NASA is set up as a system to bring in the Antichrist? Like, do you think that this is a part of occultism? Or
I think at the highest levels of many of the world's religions, many of the world's governments, many institutions, technological institutions, there are occultists. This is kind of a side tangent, but there's so many Freemasons within NASA. At the very least, let's say, I'm trying to separate the real crazy stuff from the base level moon landing. Let's say at the very least, they know how to keep secrets. They're in these secret societies that they only know what is going on. You have so many 33rd degree Masons who were astronauts. They know how to keep secrets. So if someone told them, you're shutting your mouth about this, we're going to fake this moon landing. If it's someone in their chapter asking them to do this, they're definitely going to listen to that.
So with this, you mentioned secret keeping, and yeah, of course, at the highest level, at the highest upper echelons of the authorities, the ruling class, of course, they keep secrets from the common folk like us. But my question is, if we use Occam's razor, right, the least amount of steps to explain something is probably the answer. If we're just thinking about the moon landing, because again, we're, to reduce it back to this like base level topic, are we to assume that, because it's not just the upper echelon of people pulling strings, all the thousands of people that worked for NASA, all the people that were kind of tangentially tied to this, like the family members of all the people that worked on this, mission control, the astronauts themselves, the people that were subordinates to the astronauts, because again, the astronaut, they're all military men, right? Are we to assume that all of these people were kept in the loop and were silenced and told? Because how can that many people keep this secret for that long? I don't, because two things can't be true. I mean, sometimes two things can be true at the same time, but when we're looking at the government and we're saying they're inept at doing a lot of things, we don't have the technology to go up there, they slip up all the time, we can't trust them because they're a bunch of knuckleheaded idiots. But then at the same time, they're so sophisticated and savvy that they can pull the wool over our heads, and they can make sure that everyone is in lockstep and everyone can keep the secret. I find that hard to believe.
I believe they tried to get to the moon. I don't think they could. Not everyone's in the loop. They ran so many test simulations. You see the big room, all the test simulations. They see numbers on the screen. With the moon landing, there would have been no difference from a simulation, numbers on the screen, to the real thing. It's statistics. You can move statistics around, and it's just information. So no one was in the loop. They thought we really went, but I don't think everyone was on it. Even some people that knew about it. Leading up to the Apollo missions, there were 9 pilots or crew that died from accidents within a 2-year period. Statistically, this is an odd occurrence. Of course, 3 of these deaths is the original crew that should have been on the moon, the Apollo 1 crew. There was the accidental fire on one of the shuttles. Gus Grissom, he would have been the first man on the moon. He was a giant critic of the moon missions. He said that we weren't going to go, that the technology just wasn't there. I believe there's some famous pictures. He hung up a lemon on the shuttle to show everyone that it was a lemon of a project, because he didn't think we were going to take off, that we would be able to do it like NASA was saying. He would have spur of the moment press conferences where he was very harsh on the US efforts to go to the moon, and he just so happens to die in an accidental fire. His wife and his son believe that it was a hit job. This is not what I believe. This is from the words of his widow and his son. And apparently Gus said the day before the fire that the CIA was all over the grounds. Again, not what I'm saying. This is what his widow said and what his son said. It's in the book Moon Man by Bart Sobrell.
Interesting. So, John, I saw you perk up a bit. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. So, Brandon, are you on the same vein of thought that the lunar rover footage is also fake because we still can't get to the moon? Yet 3 countries have rovers that have toured the moon for over 5 months at a time, as well as the. So what I'm getting at over here is, if we can't make it to the moon, how the rovers get there, and how do we get that footage? And from various countries. So it's not just the U.S. government that you would claim then would be the deceivers, but then you would be also claiming that those other countries are deceivers as well. Can you kind of rationalize and make sense of any of that?
Of course, you can do unmanned missions to the moon, because robots don't, or if they're unmanned, they can pass through the Van Allen radiation belt, no problem. We can send rovers. Funny enough, the Chinese probes have a different soil color than all of our lunar images. A lot of these rovers now, they show like a darker brown soil, but on all the moon photography, it's it's a gray soil, so it doesn't even match to what the actual rovers up there now are seeing. But
So,
I believe the
on,
rovers have
yeah,
went.
yeah, on that. So the concept of video footage, we bring back a couple tons or however many tons of moon rock supposedly, and that looks different than what's in video footage, or the dust looks different than what's in video footage. I would think, light spectrum also varies, because we do have an atmosphere of many layers that light needs to get through. We do have different lighting effects from reflection and such. So I'm kind of curious there. That doesn't seem to me to be a realistic, perspective of measurement. But again, I'm not a scientist. If your stipulation is we don't have the technology to go back to the moon, because that's what the NASA the astronaut said, yet we have material robotics on the moon, so we do have the means to get there. It's physically possible. Now the stipulation would have to move to, okay, now it's just humans cannot get there because of the radiation. Yet we have very great means of studying radiation over the last 70 years. So I'm still not yet convinced that that's a rational argument. I hear what you're saying. Okay. I just don't think that we're limited as many are claiming that we are limited.
So I also wanted to bring something up. Producer Greg, I sent you a link. You might want to patch this in, but it's another thing that I was reading up about before we did this podcast. It's not really like a gotcha for Brandon. It's just something interesting, and it kind of ties in perfectly with what John was asking. By the way, if you hear me say TFT, it's because John goes by that fellow there. He's a moderator on my channel. So John was listing, unmanned technology that we have there. There's a list of retroreflectors that we have on the moon. And these retroreflectors, according to the internet, are devices which reflect light back to its source. 5 were left on sites at the moon by 3 crews of the Apollo program. So we've been doing it since, I guess, 1969. And it looks like out of the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are all operational. So the first one, let me see, there's one July 21st, 1969, Apollo 11 mission. There's one left by the Soviet Union, Luna 17, the 17th of November, 1970. There's another NASA one, Apollo 14, January 1971. Another NASA one from Apollo 15, July 31st, 1971. And then finally, the Soviet Union left another one, Luna 21, on the 15th of January, 1973. And so, yes, these aren't manned, but these were left by manned crews, and these are still all operational. And again, you can literally shine a laser at these, and they bounce back and they give us information like distance. So what say you to that? Are you to argue that these either don't exist, or are you to argue that these were just left purely unmanned?
Yeah, and then Brandon, I have one more last question after.
Yeah, I would say that's completely different than having a manned mission to the moon. We can, get stuff there unmanned, but I don't think there hasn't been people on the moon again.
So you're claiming that that's just a lie, that these weren't left there by manned crews, because they claim they were.
I don't believe. I would double check that information. Is there pictures of this? Because I don't believe that happened.
Well, there's pictures of the reflectors. You can see Greg's sharing a screen here. We can see on the bottom gallery, we see the Apollo 11 lunar laser ranging retroflector. We see the Apollo 14 retroflector.
Oh, I get what you're saying, that these were left during the Apollo missions.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. It could be a doctored image. A lot of the footage is kind of fake looking. We'll get into the footage, but they could have been there another way. I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. I can only speak on what I know for sure.
Right. Wow, we see this. Looks like tinfoil left on a sandy beach there.
Yeah.
So John, what was your follow-up?
Yeah, so I just had a couple other questions because that rabbit hole with the various participants of whatever organizations. I'm interested to see, okay, what other contingent, I guess, arguments or perspectives are hinging upon this belief that the lunar landing didn't happen?
Okay, I got stuff. So we were talking moon rocks. Apparently, do you guys know how many moon rocks were collected on the Apollo missions?
I don't.
No.
270. Of 270, 180 have vanished, unaccounted for. They're stolen, missing. They're literally just MIA. Then America gave some moon rocks to the Dutch. They tested them, and they were fake moon rocks. They were petrified wood. So people say, yes, we have these moon rocks. Half of them are gone that we were supposed to have. The ones that were tested were a piece of wood from Earth. The rest of them are supposedly in this Smithsonian, I believe, and I'm pretty sure, I didn't double check this, but I remember watching a documentary a while ago on the History Channel. I believe last time someone did try to locate the remaining moon rocks, those were gone too.
Interesting. Yeah, that is also damning, right? And I guess my kind of distrust of the government would lead me to say, well, yeah, I mean, they're going to mess with everything. They're not going to give people all the information.
Why'd they give the Dutch a piece of wood? That, you know what I mean? That's crazy.
So, let's see. Greg's pulling up something pertaining to that.
I just was looking at. What do you want me to pull up?
Google missing moon rocks or Dutch fake moon rock, petrified wood. You'll see some stuff. Exactly. It's damning. And I'll tell you guys, I'm open too, but you put a gun to my head, I'm going to say we didn't go. I think there's enough evidence. It doesn't pass the common sense test for me. So gun to my head, I'm saying that we didn't go, but I'm open too. Do I know for sure? No, but I know that some of these stories, they just don't make sense.
Yeah. We can see, let me see. Investigations, missing gifted moon rocks. Okay, in here, wait, scroll up a bit.
Sorry.
You got to see the wood.
In 1998, a unique federal law enforcement undercover operation was created to identify and arrest individuals selling bogus moon rocks. Okay, so this seems like a FTC thing with private people selling moon rocks. Let me see. Missing gifted moon rocks. I don't see anything about them, the Dutch thing.
I'll search Dutch.
Yeah, you might have to do another one. I'd go fake moon rock, Dutch. What is that? Holland. It was a Dutch museum.
No.
Yeah, right there. Possibly from
okay.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Just pull up this.
Wait, Netherlands samples. Here, go back. The link under that. This is interesting. I had never heard this.
I wanted to bring it up because I know in your episode 2 of your podcast, I heard you talking about moon rocks.
Right.
And it wasn't initially on my list. I'm like, oh, you got to hear about the piece of wood.
You know, the crazy thing is I believe that. I totally believe that we would give another country fake moon rocks. That's like,
so here's the question.
It's just weird.
Yeah, so here's the question. And contingent upon your argument, what would you have as a control to test against?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they know a piece of petrified wood when they see it. There's enough samples on Earth.
Sure, right, okay, right. So all of the moon rocks, applying that concept of none of the moon rocks are real because we haven't gotten to the moon. So what is the control to test against what is held by the authorities as true? So what is your control against that then?
Well, I mean, we don't see them. They're all gone. There are no moon rocks. They supposedly have a fraction of these moon rocks, but I was pretty sure last time someone wanted to see the last fraction of the moon rocks, they were gone. I guess you'd have to get those moon rocks, look at them under a microscope, and experiment on them. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not sure. But it's a little weird to say the least. Some of the most important artifacts from such an expedition, they're all gone.
Are gone.
And
Yeah.
need one, a fake one, a piece of wood. It's weird. It's funny. It smells like cheese, dude.
Sure.
And you know what I mean? It's weird. I think we can all admit it is strange. Again, I'm not, I'm here. You put a gun to my head. I'm going to say we didn't go, but I got a list. I even got more on this list.
No, let's keep going. Let's keep going. What's next on the docket?
So the immediate press conference, it's an hour long. I put the link so some people could see it if they want. I'm not about to sit through an extra hour of the press conference. But all the astronauts, they looked depressed, unenthusiastic, like they didn't want to be there. Half of them looked like they were falling asleep. It would be so abnormal for this achievement. And they also couldn't get their story straight. I believe one astronaut stated that he saw the stars light up the whole bright sky. Another one said they didn't see any stars, as there's no stars in the official photographs. And the other person said he doesn't remember. You don't remember if the sky was pitch black or light up with 1,000 stars?
So Greg, in that initial link I sent you of that UK list, they mention the picture with no stars. Also, I read something, we can probably pull it up after the fact, that the astronauts claiming that they saw stars while they were going up towards there was pertaining to the radiation exposure that they were experiencing at the time. So I don't know if that debunks the whole Van Allen belt, we can't make it through, because apparently when people are exposed to high amounts of radioactive particulate, they see stars. It messes with your vision. So here, if we scroll down, there is
part of the lunar shot star concept, I guess, challenge is that okay, well, the sun, they were in what would be considered the daytime, and the light from the sun would drown out the light from the stars, theoretically. Again, what do I know? During the daytime I'm here, I can look outside and I don't see stars, but that's also because we have an atmosphere that's diffusing a lot of light. So I don't know any of that. However, if that's the case, to where you're in space and then you have some type of a light effect drowning out the other lesser light based off of distance, I don't know what that would look like.
Greg, scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
There's another a different one on this list about the pitch black night, where there aren't any stars. Right here, Conspiracy 3. Why there are no stars in the picture of the NASA moon landing. And we can see here an astronaut carrying some items. He's all suited up, and you can see it's just like pitch black landscape. And for a layperson like myself, I would assume, there'd be a bunch of, like, you're in space, there's a bunch of stars everywhere. I don't know enough to speak for or against this. If we scroll down, Greg, we might be able to see. So it says, if the image was really taken on the moon, shouldn't the sky be filled with stars? After all, there's no atmosphere to distort the image, no clouds to interrupt that glorious view. Conspiracy theorists argue that the lack of stars in the Apollo 11 mission photographs prove that the event was staged. Here's another solution. Both the astronauts and the lunar landscape itself are brightly lit by the sun, which is what John was kind of referring to earlier. The sky may look black, but remember, this is in fact daytime on the moon. If you're going to take a photo of a brightly lit scene, your camera's shutter speed needs to be fast and your aperture incredibly small. In that situation, faint objects like stars simply aren't going to show up. So that does kind of speak to literally that last point.
To me, it's not the fact that there were no stars, although if you were going to fake it, you wouldn't want stars, because astrologers could easily find discrepancies with the stars.
Mhm.
But it's the fact that the astronauts didn't know if they saw stars or not, that the whole entire press conference was just so weird. I mean, if you guys have an hour to kill, I'd watch the hour-long press conference. You got a lot going on. You probably
But
get better
can't
stuff.
but what about, what do you say to the fact that these dudes experienced something like it couldn't, let's assume they did go to the moon. We can't really, we don't have any bearing or reference about how difficult that is, and what that undertaking was, because again, that is such a formative experience that literally no one except for a small infinitesimal amount of people will ever experience. I think just not that I'm like an expert on humanity, but just being a human, I could see another human coming down and immediately having cameras in their face and them being kind of perplexed. Like, how do I even explain what we went through and what we saw? I mean, what was that famous quote? When like when you're up on the moon, you look at the Earth and you realize that like you've never felt so small or whatever. There's some quote, Greg, you can pull it up. I probably butchered it, but like, yeah, it's an experience that the majority of people have probably don't even have a bearing for. So to say, you know, these astronauts just accomplished something and they're acting so so kind of non-excited and underwhelmed. I mean, do you really expect them to come down, have a press conference and act like they just won like a state championship, being like, yeah. No, I could see them being like,
I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one, Jory. You worded it pretty well. When I was in the MMA cage, I'm thinking to myself now, when I was fighting, you just see what's in front of you. You don't see the fans. You don't hear anything. So I guess they would be pretty dead set on a tunnel vision with that. I guess apparently you could block out if there's is any stars there. I put it in the gray area. It's we don't know. The footage is worth watching, but it's definitely probable that they were all just tired. They wanted to go home and sleep and eat a steak instead of, you know,
right.
astronaut food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, that space ice cream something to write
Oh,
home
space!
about.
I remember that in the 90s. Getting a pouch of space ice cream. Yeah.
It never lived up to it. It never lived up to like what you think it would taste like.
So thus far, I'm not like, again, gun to my head, I don't think that I've been swayed, because so far we have, and I'm oversimplifying this for the sake of the podcast. I'm not oversimplifying this to be disrespectful to Brandon, but so far it's an example of Nazis working for NASA to get the rocket technology that I understand happened. Doesn't really make me believe less that we've been there. The Van Allen's belt thing, again, assuming we had the technology at the time to move fast enough, I think that we probably did go through there. And plus we have reports from astronauts saying they literally saw stars while they were doing it. So it's like, I think radiation did affect them. So that didn't really convince me. The moon rock thing is is hilarious to me, because I assume the government does this type of stuff where they mess with other governments and they don't want to give governments any information that they have. I think that's typical clandestine, weird, like sneaky, sleazy government stuff. I believe in. I just totally think the government is capable of doing that. And then, Greg, in a little bit, we're going to pull up, now that we know how to get audio on the podcast when we screen share, we're going to pull up that initial video of the gentleman saying that they destroyed the information. I think that's stupid. I think it's totally within the realm of possibility that the government destroyed that. Because I mean, look at the, I've mentioned Jeffrey Epstein twice already on these recordings. Look at the Jeffrey Epstein thing. I mean, how coincidental that the cameras just happen not to work in this perfect time, and oops, guys, we don't have any information on this, and oops, the two guards that were supposed to be looking at him happened to go take a little break during that time. Wow, crazy. It's like, yeah, the government obviously does this stuff. So right now I'm not totally convinced so far that we haven't gone there. I just think all this has done is reinforce the fact that yeah, our government is like sleazy, and governments in general are kind of sleazy. I don't. Am I off base here?
No, I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. What would you say, just talking about the Apollo 1 fire, to Gus Grissom, who was a critic of the that we were going to go to the moon? His widow and his son openly think it was a hit job. How would you? Does that have any consideration in your mind?
I don't know enough about it. I think that that's interesting. Um, I think that's one, but that would be an example of one person involved that's against it when all the other ones are pretty much saying the same thing. Yeah, we went. It was an incredible experience. I think
so. Yeah, can I offer something also?
Yeah.
Brandon, what would it take for you to believe that the moon landing was real?
Throw me on a rocket ship. Let's go. I don't
so
know.
you have to. So you personally have to see it to believe it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess a story that looks less fishy. I think that up so far brought up a lot of holes. We still didn't even get into the footage. I do have a smoking gun. I was kind of saving it to
Well,
a little bit later.
we can go over some more. I'm still waiting to be convinced. Like I want to be convinced. It's like X-Files. I want to believe. You know what I mean? So I'm here with bated breath, waiting for the smoking gun. But let's keep it going.
Okay, let's see what we got. I just am pulling out my notes here.
This could still just be round one too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, we could totally do probably a series on this, Brandon, if you're down.
Oh, yeah, I'm down. Hey, anytime you want to talk conspiracies, like I said, I'm not the expert, but gun in my head, I'm probably going this way, but it could be 5149. We might have went. I don't know. I applied to NASA when I was getting out of grad school. I saw they needed a physical therapist. I'm like, yo, I go do that. I don't know if we went, but I'm giving you want to talk. If you want to talk guns, watches, weightlifting, dude, whatever, I'm always down.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you in the camp? I kind of asked this a moment ago. Are you personally in the camp that you have to see it to believe it? Like you made the joke, put me on a rocket and go. Is that literally what it would take for you to believe it?
No, probably not. I mean, I do think Elon's trying to get us to Mars. When he was trying to vertically land his rocket, I believe he failed 5 or 6 times. With very good, there was 6 engines, each with its own supercomputer that linked up to each other. His Dragon rockets, it failed every time he tried to vertically land it. But we vertically landed a rocket without hitch on the moon 6 times in a row. And the space shuttle was the first time in history of all manned aircraft, including the bipedal plane, that was successful on its first attempt. Elon's struggling so much now with so much resources and technology. To think we did this in the 1960s, I mean, I think you got to try harder to believe it than you do not to believe it. It doesn't pass that first common sense test for me.
I'm not.
That's not enough for me.
Yeah, I understand why it's compelling to you, Brandon. For me, I have not yet been convinced. I think there's a whole other facet I would love to get to. We've already been going for over an hour. I think we're gonna probably have to do a part 2.
Let me drop one thing then. Let me drop one thing on you.
Okay.
All right. There is a leaked tape. There is a 1-hour unedited film of astronauts on the shuttle with a fake 1-foot model of the Earth, placing it on the window, pretending to be halfway to the moon. And there is another party in the room that told them after they break, talk, as if it was a delay in a radio signal. You can find this 1 hour of footage. It's around. Even the best critics on this say, oh, this is fake footage. It is them rehearsing being halfway to the moon before they were there. Every ounce that they brought on the spacecraft was like $1 million. So they brought a fake model of the Earth to practice what it was going to be like when they were halfway there. This is real footage. They're saying that it was just them rehearsing. But this falls flat because the official real clip of them being halfway to the moon was about 10 to 15 seconds out of this hour-long segment. I have included a video snippet of that as well. I did it quickly. You can find the full footage out there, but this is what I was able to find.
All right, Greg's pulling it up.
And if they faked being halfway there, then they faked the whole thing.
I think that is kind of bizarre, but I don't know if
Is this it?
Yeah, this is it. Go to about 10 minutes and 30 seconds. For the viewers,
the
it's worth
volume's up,
watching
Greg.
the whole thing, but I believe this is where you can see that the footage was faked.
Neil Armstrong, right? That's the Earth over there on the right. But wait a minute, it's not. It's the window. They're using a 1 foot diameter circular photograph of the Earth, putting it on top of the circular window. And now here they are breaking down the shot, the photograph, in order to get ready for an interior showing the astronauts. You know what I mean? So there they are. There's proof right there that it's a fake shot. Here's even an outtake here when an astronaut's arm gets in front of the window. Look at this. Oh my goodness. So if that's really the Earth floating in space, that must be the arm of God going right in front of it. Oh my goodness. So this is the smoking gun. This is them faking being halfway to the moon. Okay.
Wait, hold on. Wait,
It's
I'm confused.
supposedly right out the window.
Well, if they're filming from inside, though, couldn't that just be the arm of an astronaut going over the lens? Like if I go like this for the video viewers, if I go like this, my thumb and forefinger look like it's going to crush my head, but that's just because of the distance between my like this isn't the hand of God. This is the hand of Jory.
Right.
It's just because
Right.
my hand is close to the lens. Do you know what I mean? So couldn't it be like if my head was the moon, or excuse me, if my head was the Earth and this camera was the camera that was in that that shuttle, couldn't it be like, oops, I accidentally like brushed right? That doesn't mean that.
Yes. But there's footage of them, and I don't know if it's in this video. I was kind of throwing everything together, so we'll either have to find it, or I want your viewers look this up. I want you to look this up. There's footage of them placing the fake model on the window. It's within this hour-long tape.
Right. Well, that is bizarre. But again,
there is the third party that says speak or talk to let them know when there was a radio delay. If they're on the lunar shuttle, there was the astronaut, there was the communications. There shouldn't have been a third party there whose voice is different than the other ones that they identified in that video.
So Michael Collins was there.
Say again?
If Michael Collins was speaking then. So
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael
Right.
Collins, right?
Right.
No, it was a different party, I believe. You'd have to watch the hour-long video or find a
Well, we
different
will
video.
leave
Okay.
Yeah.
because Brandon was actually so well prepared. We're going to leave links to everything in the description on YouTube. But again, like, I just think that if my head was the Earth and the camera was in the shuttle, having something go in front of it that looks larger than the subject you're trying to film doesn't mean that that thing is actually large. It just means that like it was closer to the lens. It's just depth of field. So that's not totally compelling to me, but the talking, the chattering in the background and the queuing up as if there's like a director in the background being like, okay, do another take or whatever, that is kind of silly to me. So we're probably going to do part 2. There's one thing that I want to bring up, which is probably a huge can of worms. And then I'm going to ask for your advice real quick, because that's something that we do every time at the end of the podcast. But real quick, Brandon and John and Greg, if you want to chime in. How come every conspiracy theory, specifically when we get to NASA, how come it always comes down to Jews? Because being a Jew, I never got any of the memos of like about any of this, but apparently whenever you Google moon landing conspiracy, it always mentions Judaism. Why is that?
I think that is actually like, there's misinformation that's purposely out there to make conspiracy theories look stupid. And I think that's one of them. I don't think the Jews did anything. Maybe at the high level, but also at the high level of the Vatican Church is pretty. There's some stuff going on there too. I mean, I don't think the Jews are responsible for anything. The Rothschilds, which does happen to be a Jewish family,
Right.
controls most of the banks. So that could be where it comes from. And a lot of the occult teachings is kind of, I believe it was taken from, and I'm not an expert, maybe you know better than me, but the Jewish Kabbalah,
Right.
the
Jewish mysticism.
they damn it. So they go down the left-hand path. There's supposed to be the two paths, the right-hand path,
left-hand magic.
left-hand path.
Right.
And they all go down that left-hand path. Again, this isn't what I believe, but this is what they believe. You can find all this information. You have heard of some of it. So maybe that's where some of this comes from. But as a conspiracy theorist, stop hating on the Jews. Give Jory a break, all right?
I appreciate that. So guys, we're gonna do a part 2 on this specific topic, and Brandon and John, hopefully both of you will come back. Brandon, I definitely want you on here again to talk conspiracy theories, because you have proven yourself to be a worthy opponent for me trying, because I'm a conspiracy skeptic, I guess, whereas like conspiracy theorists are skeptical of everything. So but I'm open-minded enough to be swayed. So today, I don't think I was swayed yet, because you said gun to my head. Gun to my head, I would still say we probably went. No, maybe. I honestly think we went. But the things that you mentioned are compelling, and they are very interesting. So this isn't something like, you know, when you read about some conspiracies, they're like, oh, well, you know, NASA, if you read the word NASA in Hebrew, it means like to lie or something. Like there's all these things talking about like Hebrew and all that. When I read that, not even just as a Jew, but as anything, I'm just like, this I can't take this seriously anymore. But the things you brought up weren't like that. They were all very compelling, all reasonable. They seemed of sound mind, and I wasn't compelled, but that doesn't mean that you did a bad job. It just means we need to keep fleshing this out. So John, gun to your head, what's your stance?
Oh, I don't have a reason to say we didn't go.
Greg.
Yeah, Brandon brought up a lot of interesting points. I think we move on from things from one point to another point, and I think we could have went in a different focus of experimenting, and we just left that to, okay, good, we did it. Left some reflectors or whatever. We have the technology to get other crafts there, so multiple countries claim that and have data from multiple crafts being at that location. So clearly we can get there, whether it's a manned mission. I don't have a reason not to believe that we didn't put a person on the moon.
Interesting. Greg, what's your final take? Producer Greg's going to chime in.
All right, so
gun to your head.
Gun to my head. I actually don't think we made it. I think we went, but I don't think we made it.
So you think we attempted it?
I think we attempted it, and the reason for that is stuff that we didn't even mention today. It's like, I think we would have gone back if we made it, or if it's possible. I think Elon Musk would have gone back by now. I think he would have taken a little bit of time to be like, all right, if these guys did it back then, I can prove that wrong. Like, I honestly think that with the other information outside of this, and just like people being people, I think we would have gone back by now if it had happened now. But it really doesn't even have to do with any of this. It's just like, now it's like gun to my head. I'm like, all right, I got enough information to be like, I think we went. I just don't think we got there, because before I thought we got there.
Right. Well, interesting. Well, we're gonna, for the listeners out there that are frustrated that we didn't all come to a consensus. This is kind of what I'm trying to showcase with this podcast. Again, we're not only going to talk conspiracy theory. We will talk about watches. I'm sure I'll have Brandon on to talk about watches at some point. We're going to talk about cars. We're going to talk about weightlifting. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. But the truth is, when we talk about these hot button issues like conspiracy theories and stuff, the whole point of this podcast is to show we don't all have to agree. And then when we disagree, we also don't have to leave storming out being like, fine, agree to disagree. Fine. No, it doesn't have to be like that. We can all be adults and be like, wow, this was really fun. Like I wasn't convinced, but that's really cool. And I want to keep talking about it. So I hope if there's anything you guys at home take away from this, it's just keep the dialogue open, regardless of what it is. If it's politics, religion, your new dietary trend, your favorite superhero movie, just like keep talking, keep the dialogue open. And you don't always need to convince the other party, because guess what? Differences of opinions are what's cool and what makes it fun. So this is something that I'm striving to do at the end of each and every podcast. Brandon, as the newest guest here, what's some advice that you would give to the listener? Just, it doesn't have to pertain to moon landing or conspiracy. Just what's something that you would like to leave our listeners right now?
I think you said it very well, Jory. Just think critically. So many times people, they wake up, they go to work, they come home, they crack a beer, and they just don't look what's going on around them. They don't question anything. Anytime eating food, I could go off on diet. Another one, I'm a carnivore. I only eat meat and fruit right now, and I do honey. But even the things people are putting in their bodies, they don't pay attention to stuff. So I think you should think critically about every aspect of your life. Anytime someone tells you something, you shouldn't take what I say with a grain of salt. You should take it with a grain of salt. Go look this stuff up. I think I at least gave you enough information, viewers, now I'm talking to you, that you can look up some of this and be like, oh, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. That moonwalk was a piece of wood. Just, think critically. At the end of the day, you're all like me. You're like Jory. You just want to learn and expand your knowledge base. It's never going to hurt you to hear someone else's point of view. And I just want to say again, Jory, it's kind of surreal here talking to you. You are a big, big inspiration for me creating my own YouTube channel. I did call you out because you insulted me a little bit on Instagram. Someone commented on you. They go, hey, Jory, your arms are looking good. And I go, but we know who has the biggest biceps on YouTube. And Jory said, I doubt it. He typed to me, I doubt it.
Well, Brandon, that was, in my defense, that was before I knew Brandon. And guess what, guys? I'm going to be following Brandon on Instagram. I'm going to be subscribing to his YouTube channel, watching Unwind. If that's not a good enough seal of approval for you, I don't know what is. I hope you go ahead, follow him on social media, watching Unwind, follow him on Instagram, watching Unwind. We'll leave all the links in the description. And just one last plug for this kind of podcast in its infancy. If you could support us, listen to us on Spotify, on Anchor. We're going to try to get on Apple Podcasts and on Google Podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, it's free. So just subscribe, you support us, and you help us out a bunch. And then if you want to go above and beyond, check us out on Patreon and help us out there. Guys, thank you so much. I want to thank our panelists, if you will, John, TFT, and Brandon, of course. Thank you so much. I want to have you guys on again. And thank you, Greg, for making this as smooth as possible. And we'll get better as it goes on, guys. We had some difficulties, some choppiness here, but this is the second week. Actually, no, this is still the first week that we're doing this. So yeah, it's crazy. I've lost track of time. All right, guys, panel, thank you so much for joining me. And viewers, listeners, thank you so much. I will catch you on the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. Just be nice to each other. Yeah.